So buenas tardes, we'll try this again. So far today, you've heard from my colleagues and my friends. Jose talked to us about what the economic impacts of artificial intelligence or the impacts of artificial intelligence on the economic development of the country. Esther talked to us about what it means, what artificial intelligence from an entrepreneurial mindset means. Andrea talked to us a bit about what is the future of artificial intelligence, and the future is indeed bright. My job today, at least the job I've been given, is to talk to you about what does this mean in the context of entrepreneuring and startup entrepreneuring, to try to make it practical. Now, the presentation I'm going to give you today, or the talk I'm going to give you today, is not dissimilar from the talk that I gave last year. However, in some ways, it is profoundly different. And it's profoundly different because the things that I told you last year have changed this year. And they've changed largely because of what artificial intelligence is enabling us as startup entrepreneurs to do. Indeed, it's more than enabling us to do it. It's forcing us to do it. We have no choice if we want to be successful entrepreneurs going forward. So the clicker, I guess, is here. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about startup entrepreneuring. I'm going to give it to you from a perspective of a U.S. startup entrepreneur. So, some of you are entrepreneurs. Some of you are thinking about becoming entrepreneurs. Let's talk about what that means. One of the things that I have learned in my career as a startup entrepreneur, and my many years of doing it, is you don't learn how to do this from a book. You don't learn how to do this simply by doing it. You learn how to do it from the context or from the learnings of people that have come before you, other startup entrepreneurs. So let's start off by first looking at what some other startup entrepreneurs can tell us about startup entrepreneuring. Who was the very first startup entrepreneur? Christopher Columbus. One may say Christopher Columbus was a startup entrepreneur. In fact, he was an entrepreneur. And the very first venture capitalist in the world was Queen Isabella. So what did Christopher Columbus tell us about his role as a startup entrepreneur? It says, by prevailing over all obstacles and distractions, one may unfailingly arrive at his chosen goal or destination. Now that really embodies what building a startup is all about. But what did Queen Isabella say from the context of an investor? Questions. She said, I will assume the undertaking for my crown of castle and am ready to pawn my jewels to defray the expenses of it. The treasury should be found, if the treasury should be found inadequate. Now, that's the thinking of a venture capitalist. It's also the thinking of a startup entrepreneur. Because if you really, really believe in your endeavor, you're going to be willing to put things on your credit cards, go into debt, and so forth, because this is what it means. This is what commitment is all about. But let's put it in the context of some modern contemporary startup entrepreneurs, some names that you know, some names you may not know. First one is Jeff Bezos. Everybody knows Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos has built Amazon. But Jeff Bezos was also one of the first developers of an AI large language model in terms of building Amazon. And he said failure and invention are inseparable twins. And indeed they are. In order to be a successful startup entrepreneur, you have to be prepared and be comfortable with failure, because you are. And we'll talk about that more a little bit. Sam Altman. Now, for those of you who don't know Sam Altman was the founder of OpenAI. He was also one of the co-founders of Y Combinator. It says that startups that don't first figure out a product some users love also seem to rarely develop the sense of mission that most companies have, the best companies have. So the first thing to figure out is, as a startup entrepreneur, is what problem you're solving and who are you solving it for? And are there enough people there to care that in fact they're really going to buy your product and make your business successful? Reid Hoffman. Now, Reid Hoffman was the co-founder of LinkedIn. He's also a very prominent AI investor today. And he says, this is so true. An entrepreneur is someone who jumps off a cliff and builds his plane on the way down. Think about that. Those of you that have built businesses, those of you who are planning on building businesses, in fact, that's pretty much true. That really embodies it. Bill Gates. Success is a lousy teacher. Success seduces smart people into thinking that they can't lose. This goes back to the failure concept again. We have to be willing to fail, and we have to learn from our failures, because we will. If we don't learn from our failures, we're destined to repeat them again. So success is, in fact, a lousy teacher. Steve Jobs. You can't just ask customers what they want, then try to give it to them. By the time that you get it built, they will want something new. So this is the old shooting ahead of the duck. If you shoot at the duck, you'll never hit it. You have to shoot it where the duck is going to be. We're going to talk a little bit about how artificial intelligence can help us to realize where the duck is going to be. Mustafa Suleyman. Now, he was the co-founder of DeepMind. For me, the goal has never been anything but how to do good in the world. Now, we fundamentally believe, as startup entrepreneurs, as my partners here sitting in the room today, fundamentally believe that as we build businesses, as we invest in businesses, obviously we do it for economic gain, and we do it for the economic gain of the entrepreneurs and their investors and their co-founders and so forth. But every business also needs to give back. Every business needs to do something that says, for all the good I'm doing, I'm going to create good for somebody else. And that's what he was talking about in that statement. And of course, we all know the name up here. He was famous before, but he's particularly famous now. In some ways, for positive things, in some ways, maybe not for such positive things, Elon Musk. But some people don't like change. You need to embrace change if the alternative is going to be disaster. Change. This is what we're talking about today. It's change. Artificial intelligence is causing change. And we need to embrace it or get left behind. And getting left behind is never a good option. Lastly, being an entrepreneur is like eating glass and staring into the abyss of death. Now, again, for those of you that have built businesses, you recognize that, in fact, that's exactly what it is like. It's a wild ride, but you need to be prepared for what you're going to face. So what are the defining characteristics of an entrepreneur? They're visionary. Entrepreneurs are visionaries. They're risk takers. That's the engine that drives them forward. That's the engine that makes them get up every morning. That's the engine that allows them to see what others can't. And they're willing to take the risk to try to help that vision to become reality. This is something interesting most people don't know. In the United States, which of course is a very entrepreneurial society, 50% of all the private sector jobs created in the last 4 years have not been created by big companies. They've been created by companies that have been in business less than 2 years. Startup entrepreneurs. And this is part of what I mean by giving back. And this is part of why we work in Latin America, is we know that if we can help startup entrepreneurs from Colombia or Chile or Argentina or Peru or Mexico to become successful, that they're going to hire more people in their home countries for their businesses. And consequently, all boats rise with the tide. So I'll give you my personal perspective. Not everybody agrees with me on this. But we see in Latin America an awful lot of attempts by the government to create economic growth in their countries, and attempts by the government to do it through entrepreneuring. And governments don't create value. Startup entrepreneurs create value. Business people create value. Those are the ones that create jobs. And this is why we think it's so important to be doing some of the work that we're doing here in the context of the giving back theme that I talked to you about before. So, oops, backwards. But is it all about the vision? What are some of the skills that an entrepreneur needs in order to be successful? I'm going to go through these really fast. Comfort with ambiguity. Write effective emails. Communication. Manage your time. There is never enough time. How do you manage your time? Research. Be good at research. Be good at learning. Understanding AI. Now that was in here last year. I should probably have moved it to the top of the stack. Understanding AI is becoming almost table stakes to build a startup today. Networking, building, maintaining, nurturing your network. Self-learning. Public speaking. You got to like to get up in front of people and do this stuff if you want to be a startup entrepreneur. And most importantly, being comfortable with saying, I don't know. Because I guarantee you, you don't know. I don't know. He doesn't know. She doesn't know. I guarantee you, you don't know. Building a startup is really, really hard. I mean, it is the hardest thing you're ever going to do. But why is that? Why? It's evolutionary. It's all about where we came from 10,000, 20,000, a millennia ago. It's evolutionary. Because we have, as human beings, we have a biological need for instructions. We want to be told. Somebody has to say, tell me what to do next. Tell me what to do next. If you're that kind of person at your core, probably don't want to be a startup entrepreneur, for sure. Instructions are everywhere in our lives. They're in school when we're teachers. If we want to make something at home, we open a recipe book. Or at least most of us do. My partner Mark doesn't open a recipe book. He's an excellent chef, by the way. He doesn't open a recipe book. But we open recipe books. What are recipe books? They're instructions. They're telling us, put some of this and some of that, some of this and some of that. They're instructions. If we go on YouTube, search on anything, you can find a video on YouTube to tell you how to do anything. I guarantee you, if you wanted to find a video on YouTube on how to perform your own brain surgery, you probably could do it, because it's probably there, step by step by step by step. So, but startup entrepreneurs, startup businesses don't have any instructions. The day you decide, I'm going to do this, there's no instructions, there's no book, there's no step-by-step plan you have to follow. That's why startup entrepreneuring is so hard. It's always dealing with the unknown. Where are you going to go next? And you don't know. You find that out along the way. So it means embracing that unknown and adapting constantly as part of it. So what are you supposed to do? That's a good question. What are you supposed to do with all of this? Stop looking for instructions. Start experimenting. It's about experimentation, constant experimentation as you go. You're going to make mistakes. Relish your mistakes. Mistakes are great, because that's what teaches us. Accept the chaos, because being a startup, building a startup, is indeed chaotic. It's constant chaos. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I still get uncomfortable with the chaos sometimes, but it is constant chaos. Relish the journey. It's a trip, and it'll be the most exciting trip you'll ever make in your life. And failure. Failure. Failure is an inevitable right of building a startup. You will fail. You will fail. And I know in the Latin culture and in the European culture, failure is considered bad. We built a startup one time, Mark and I built a startup one time in partnership with a Dutch firm. We did it as a Dutch company, Dutch partners, in building that startup. And we got to the point where ultimately we realized that some of the assumptions we had made that were fundamental to the startup weren't true. And we were going to have to close the startup. My God, you'd have thought our Dutch partners, you'd have thought it was the end of the world. We said, let's close it. Good, done, we're done. Let's close it, move on. We learned from that one. No. They wouldn't let us shut it down. We had to keep that startup going because in their society, failure was considered a black mark. If they had to go to the club, to wherever they go and talk about the fact that they closed the business, everybody would have said, no, we don't want to do business with you again. I can tell you on the West Coast of the United States, there are venture capitalists that will not make an investment in a startup entrepreneur unless he or she has failed at least once. They won't invest in you if you haven't failed. Why? Because they know you're going to learn from the failures and you're not going to make the same mistakes twice, hopefully. So failure is actually not a bad thing. Now, the books you read all talk about failing fast. Fail fast, fail fast, fail fast. In some ways, that's true, but in other ways, it's really about failing efficiently. Speed versus efficiency, speed versus preparation. So consequently, if you're going to fail, fail efficiently and prepare and understand why you're doing what you're doing. So a year ago, I'd have told you, start slower to finish faster. Why? Because the old way was preparing. Get your idea, write down your assumptions, talk to customers, do market research, adjust your assumptions, validate them, build goals and milestones, build an initial product, test it, finally launch it and thrive. Okay. All those steps are still true. But this is where the AI comes in. This is where we're going to show you how to change the rule, how we change the rules of the game. So, one of the things, in addition to being investors, we are also company builders. Company builders mean we have our lab and what we call scale-up labs. The labs means builders. We originate businesses in addition to investing in business. Now, these are a couple of tools that our tech team, AI tools, that our tech team has built specifically for our internal use at this point in time. We may decide to release them, but right now we use them internally. Meshify. What's Meshify? We've talked about generative AI, and Andrea just talked to us about agents. Meshify is an agentic tool that, in fact, that is, how does it help an entrepreneur? Think of it as having an operating partner that is a version of yourself that never sleeps. And what Meshify does is Meshify puts out other agents, launches other agents that scan your email, that scan your customer database, that scan your presentations, that scan the web, and they're constantly learning all the time. And they, in effect, become, or the agent, the master agent, in effect becomes a version of you. And it's a version of you that learns over time. So how does that help? How does that help the startup entrepreneur? Well, that version of you has the ability to read your emails and respond to those emails as if it were you, learning everything it has learned about you from all of your previous emails, all your previous work, plus the body of knowledge that's on the web. So consequently, it has the ability to write proposals, or at least draft proposals. Now, as Esther talked about today, none of that is a substitute for you, because it can do the grunt work, but it takes you to look at it and say, have I really thought about this? Have I really put the creative contention into this whole thing? But it really does it for you automatically. As a startup entrepreneur, that's invaluable, because it frees up time, and it frees up time that you can use to create value in your business. It frees up time that you can use to do other things that are more important. Meshify does that automatically. Now this was built as an internal tool for our startups and our portfolio companies to use. But that's tool number one. The second tool is Design Pilot. Now Design Pilot is another agentic AI tool that we have built. And if we go back to what I talked about this need to test, to have assumptions, write the assumptions down, test the assumptions by going out and validating and so forth. I refer to that as taking the dog for a walk. What Design Pilot does is Design Pilot allows you to dramatically expedite that process by creating synthetic users. So it uses large language models and databases and so forth, and it allows you to say, I have a business concept. I have an idea. I wonder if I make the dog food, will the dog eat it? And I think that my hypothetical test market is personas of this characteristic operating in this market, doing this, doing that. Design Pilot allows our companies to, in fact, do synthetically build those users. And Design Pilot uses large language models to understand what those users are all about. So in the course of a day, we can test new business theories, new business models, test, validate, change, move forward. So these are two agentic AI tools that our tech teams have built for our portfolio companies, but they're examples of the things that you can do as startup entrepreneurs in terms of using AI to go faster. So in fact, you can fail faster, but at the same time, you're failing efficiently. So you can save a year's worth of work and get it done in a couple of days. Say, oh, all right, that couldn't quite work. Let me change this hypothesis. Change the hypothesis and build and test again. Dramatically reduces the risk. So, but AI really is table stakes today. Now, again, I wouldn't have told you that a year ago. I'd have told you that AI is coming and modern startups are built by AI. But the fact is, AI is table stakes today. And the only companies that we build and the only companies that we invest in are AI-first companies. So AI-first companies AI-first, market-first companies. What does that mean? So, oh, that doesn't read very well, does it? Okay, there it goes. All right, so market-first, AI-native are the new paradigm. Now, how does a market-first, AI-native company compare from a traditional AI-enhanced startup? Many of the companies that you see today, many of the companies that we look at are in fact AI-enhanced companies, they're not AI-native companies. So, what's it mean? AI integration, a market-first AI-native startup, it's got AI at the core. It was built on AI from the ground up. It's not a wrapper around ChatGPT or one of the other large language models. It's built from the ground up. In the workshop today, you're going to hear from a couple of companies that are part of our group that in fact are AI native companies. Traditional startup, on the other hand, AI is an enhancement or an add-on. Market driven. A market first company, the market is the primary driver. The company was developed on the basis of an identified market need. Now go back to what one of the experts or one of the successful founders told us. is about building something that's solving a market problem. That's what a market-first company does. Whereas a traditional startup is very often, traditional AI enhanced startup, is very often something that it's a technology-driven decision. You know, the founder likes it, there's a technology looking for a problem to solve in some cases. So that's what a traditional company looks like. This is automation and efficiency. I talked a little bit just a minute ago about a couple of tools that allow you to go really fast and do it without lots of people and lots of time. That's an example of automation and efficiency, which means a smaller team and it's automated. Traditional startups, large team, highly manual processes. Continuous improvement. AI learns over time. Esther talked about it. Well, she's not sitting there anymore. Esther talked about it in her talk today. AI is learning minute by minute, second by second. So the model that you had this morning is going to be very different than the model you had this afternoon. So it's truly continuous improvement. In a traditional startup or traditional business, it's human-centric. Depends on humans developing new features and these kinds of things. So that's a really distinguishing feature of an AI first, or AI native company. Product evolution is continuous, it's data driven. Instead of periodic and manual, which you would see in a traditional SaaS company or a traditional company like that. And lastly, defensibility. Defensibility in a market first AI native company is the moat that they've built around the company. And that moat is based upon their data and their proprietary models. Now, the operative word there is proprietary models, not ChatGPT, not Claude, proprietary models that they have built. The two companies you'll hear from this afternoon are both companies that have proprietary models and the data that they have. Traditional businesses, it's brand, it's distribution, it's network, and so forth. So those are the differences principal differences between a market-first AI native company and a traditional company that is AI enhanced. Startup entrepreneuring is not local, it's global. You're here today, we're here today, it's global. That's why we're talking to you. So this is a brief commercial message, because you've heard us talking about Scale-Up Labs. You'd probably say, who are these Scale-Up Labs characters anyway? We're from Boston. As I said, we are a venture originator, business originator, venture builder, lab, investment company. So we build, we invest, and we accelerate. And how you often see us here in Latin America is through our Scale-Up LATAM Accelerator program. So we'll talk about why that is in a minute. We are global, or at least we're broad. We refer to this as our bi-directional entrepreneurial superhighway that connects Latin America and Europe with the United States. And since it's a bi-directional highway, that means that knowledge, experience, innovation can come north and south and east and west on that highway. And in fact, it does flow across the highway. We serve three communities. And this is really important because this is where the opportunity lies. The first community we serve is the international early stage technology companies. And those communities are served principally via our acceleration platforms, our Scale-Up LATAM and our Scale-Up Europe acceleration platforms. And the characteristics or the needs of that community are that they need investment capital, they need market access. They also need knowledge. The second community, and we accelerate to do that. The second community we serve is a community of corporations. We manage a large group of corporations that in fact we interact with a lot. And we gain great insight from that interaction with those corporations. Corporations, by their nature, though, are not innovators because they don't take risks. In order to innovate, you have to take risks. So what they need is breakthrough innovation, and they need new lines of revenue. The last community we serve are the capital communities. So we not only are investors ourselves, but we have a large network of capital that we support and we bring together in order to focus its efforts on the companies that we originate or the companies that we accelerate from Latin America and Europe. And we advise the corporate community, last community, and they need companies to invest in, and they need exit opportunities. And we service that through our investment businesses. In the center is Scale-Up Labs. This is where we originate. This is where we bring together new companies and we apply what we know to build new companies or to take the companies that we have accelerated and provide them a path towards faster growth and greater value creation. Where do we live? We live in Boston. Actually, we live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, right adjacent to the campus of MIT. The building you see behind us is our world headquarters, or our AS, is our corporate headquarters. It's the building behind us. I say corporate headquarters, that's a bit of a misnomer. We're a small company, but that's where our offices are. But if you walk out to where that sign is, there in the green, and took a baseball, if I threw the baseball in this direction, I'll hit Microsoft's AI World Headquarters. If I throw a baseball in that direction, I'll hit Google's AI World Headquarters. And if I threw the baseball a little bit farther in that direction, I'll hit Amazon's AI World Headquarters. This truly is the center of artificial intelligence. And if I walk across the street, I'm on the campus of MIT. In fact, I'm in the media lab if I walk across the street. So this is kind of our world that we live in and the world that we're bringing knowledge from to you today. So, in the couple of minutes I've got left, as I said, I've been doing this for 25 years. I've learned a couple of things. So what are some of the lessons I've learned? It's like 10 or 12 of them. One is, start a business, not a startup. Businesses have a path to profitability and liquidities. If it doesn't have a path to profitability and it doesn't have a path to liquidity, it's a hobby. That's the key differentiator between a business and a startup. So I know we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs that are really doing hobbies, not seriously building businesses. A real business has these characteristics. Ignore the real world. What does he mean by that? Ignore the real world. Real world is a place where ideas and foreign concepts and approaches always lose. All of you are sitting in this room because you have ideas and concepts that are foreign. And so the real world isn't a place where if you want to try to live in it, go work for a corporation if you want to do that. The real world is a place where isn't really a place. It's an excuse to us. It's an excuse for not trying. So in the real world, people will always be telling you why you can't. As an entrepreneur, your job is to say, yes, I can. I know I can because I believe in what I'm doing. Embrace risk. Corporations manage risk. Entrepreneurs exploit risk. This is what gives us the opportunities as entrepreneurs for outsized returns. So risk is our friend, not our enemy. So embrace risk, because without risk, you haven't got it. What are the two most important questions that you can ask yourself as a startup entrepreneur? There's two questions. There's only 4 words in the 2 questions. Only 4 words in 2 questions. Those 2 questions are, so what? Who cares? So what? Who cares? And in order to be successful as an entrepreneur, You need to be able to look in the mirror and ask yourself, so what? So what? Who cares? Those are the hardest questions that any entrepreneur can ever ask themselves. Because in order to answer those questions honestly, you might have to be willing to admit that your baby's ugly. And nobody wants to admit their baby's ugly. So those are the two hardest questions that you can ask yourself as an entrepreneur. So you make sure you're solving a problem that the real world really needs. And just because you think it's cool doesn't mean that she will, or she will. So so what, who cares? Live it or leave it. This what comes down to being to commitment. So standing for something is not about writing it down, it's about living it. So one of the questions that I will often ask young entrepreneurs is, are you a chicken or are you a pig? Now, everybody says, I don't understand. What's this guy asking me about? It's about commitment. It's about true commitment. If you think about your breakfast of huevos y chicharrón, the chicken is involved in your breakfast, but the pig is fully committed. So are you a chicken or are you a pig? No time is no excuse. There's never enough time. So there's always time if you spend it right. This is where this idea of time management and prioritization comes in, that we talked about before. If you're not growing, you're shrinking. So an idea of a static business, no go. If your business isn't moving forward and growing, you are in fact shrinking, particularly in the world of artificial intelligence today. Because this world is moving, like I said, what I would have told you a year ago is not true today. And that's happened in a year. I guarantee you that what I tell you today won't be true in 6 months. And if I talk to you in 6 months, I guarantee you that what I tell you in 6 months won't be true in 3 months. Because this is how fast this world is moving. Initial funding. This is a hard one. This one is a hard one. Because the initial funding you're going to get is going to come from you. It's not going to come somebody else's money. It's going to come from you. So you can't start a business with other people's money, what we refer to as OPM. Pardon? Oh, okay. Other people's money is going to come later. So your money is going to come from your own pocket, your own credit cards, friends and family. That's where the initial startup capital comes from to get a business started. Friends and family are people who believe in you. And then we all have people that believe in us. Failure is not an inevitable rite of passage. We learn from our successes and our failures. And as I guess it was Gates that said, I think it was Gates, that said, we often learn more from our failures than we do from our successes. So, Mother Nature, evolution, she doesn't linger on failures. If you look at the history of evolution, it's fraught with failures. This didn't work. This didn't work. This didn't work. But Mother Nature continuously adapts and changes and adapts and changes to the point where it does work. Startups are the same way. Planning is guessing. Particularly today, planning is guessing. Because you can only plan based upon what's happened in the past. You can't plan based upon what's going to happen in the future, because if you actually are able to read the future, then you shouldn't be sitting in this room. You should be in a trading floor someplace, making billions of dollars. You can only guess. So the only way to really have information, just do it. Do it. Go out and try something. There are no original ideas. This is one of my favorites. When I'm talking to an entrepreneur that may be a candidate for the acceleration program. And he or she says to me, "We don't have any competitors." I said, "Really? You don't have competitors?" And they go, no, we haven't got, nobody else is doing what we're doing. It is revolutionary. It's going to change the world. Now, as entrepreneurs, we all think what we're doing is going to change the world. But the answer to that question is, if you don't have competitors, you should be worried. Because the world is full of billions of smart people. Billions and billions of smart people. And you're guaranteed somebody else has thought of what you're doing before you have. Maybe even at the same time. So if you don't have competitors, you haven't looked hard enough because they're there. Now, just because you have competitors doesn't mean it's bad. It means it's good. It means somebody else is helping to share the risk with you. So competitors are really a good thing. Find a happy band of volunteers. Is nobody can do this by themselves. And in fact, you can't pay people at the very beginning. So find some people that believe in your mission and your vision and are attracted to what you're doing. They will join you if your vision is compelling enough. Pick a fight. Pick a fight. Competition, I talked before, competition is a really good thing. Go pick a fight. That's the most, if you're not fighting, then you're not competing hard enough. Get a life. Everybody says as entrepreneurs, we have to work all the time. That's really true. But working all the time is just going to get you tired. So find some time to smell the roses. Find some time to spend time with your family or your kids or do something you enjoy, because you'll be a better entrepreneur and a better founder as a result of it. And lastly, sales is not a department. Sales is not a department. Accounting is a department. Everybody is in sales in your business. Everything you do is selling all the time. I'm selling to you right now. Everything you're doing is selling. So, and everybody in your business, when you get big enough that you have a team and you've got a chief technology officer and a chief finance officer and a marketing person and so forth, you better hope that your leader of your technology and the leader of your finance are selling just as hard as you do, because they have to at the very beginning. Sales is not a department. So with that, muchas gracias. Thank you for your time.